Hello, everybody. Welcome to our session. So we are hopefully live on YouTube right now. I hope that you are hearing us nice and clearly. For those of you start watching us on YouTube, if you please just write something on the comment that you hear us nicely. Hello, everybody. Welcome to. This will give us an indication that everything is good. So today we have a very nice and amazing panel that I will introduce to you in a few seconds. So I heard from you that we have live and it's going wonderful. So I see that people are joining into our session. So welcome everybody. And I'm going to, give me 1 second. So. Okay, perfect, wonderful. So today we are going to talk about a very important topic. The topic of our panel, historically black colleges and universities, we can breathe. How COVID-19 and social injustice impact hospitality and tourism education, creating a climate for positive change. My name is Dr. Cihan Çobanoğlu. I'm the McKibben and Dot Chair Professor and the Director of M3 Center for Hospitality Technology and Innovation at the University of South Florida. Here I have a great and amazing co-moderator, Dr. Deanne Williams-Bryant. Deanne, welcome.
Thank you, Shihan.
Wonderful. As I have told you that we have 5 amazing panelists, I will introduce them to you in the order of their alphabetical order. First of all, Brian Barker. Brian, welcome.
Thank you.
Brian is an instructor and PhD student in the School of Hospitality Leadership in Deary House College of Business at DePaul University. And I would like to also introduce Dr. Ernest Borger. Dr. Borger, welcome.
Greetings, thank you.
Dr. Borger is the chairman of Department of Hospitality and Tourism Management at the University of Maryland Eastern Shore, although he tells me today that today is the first day of his retirement, official retirement. So congratulations.
Thank you, thank you.
Wonderful. Our next panelist is Ms. Camille Garner. She is the Regional Director of People and Culture at Four Seasons Hotel Houston. Camille, welcome.
Thank you.
Wonderful. Next, I would like to introduce Ms. Ronisha Goodwin. She is a Senior Manager of Inclusion and Diversity for Hyatt Corporation and also ICURI Industry Representative. Ronisha, welcome.
Hi, Dr. Jihan.
And last but not least, as I always say, you know, your last name starts with T, Dr. Ivan Turnseed. So that's why you are the last but not definitely least, Dr. Ivan Turnipseed. He is the president of Historically Black Colleges and Universities Hospitality Management Consortium. He is also the professor and coordinator of Hotel and Tourism Management at Cheyney University of Pennsylvania. Ivan, also welcome.
Delighted to be here. Thank you.
Wonderful. So for those of you who are watching us online, if you have any questions for our wonderful panelists, please write them in the comment section. I will monitor those, and from time to time, I will bring your questions. Now I would like to turn the floor to Dr. Williams-Bryant.
Good afternoon to the esteemed panelists. And of course, I have familiarity with all of these beautiful faces who have served in the hospitality industry and in the education space as support. The HBCU president of the consortium of schools, a former chair of an HBCU school, former student, NSMH advisors and supporters, and of course, our industry partners. You have a role to play in this, and the stakes are high. Your collective years of knowledge from both academia and industry operations and corporate recruitment will make this a very dynamic session. Welcome to our online audience, and thank you for joining us and for making this a success, as I know it will. Thank you to my colleague, Dr. Jihan, at the USF M3 Center for affording us this opportunity to convene on this platform as a part of our collaboration between Bethune-Cookman University and the School of Hospitality at USF. This panel discussion is the start of a very important conversation specific to the state of the hospitality education at the HBCU schools in particular, and the minority serving institutions as well. There are a number of topics that we could explore today, and we will probably not get to all the issues. So out of respect for your time, we will try to keep the questions centered towards the topic. And hopefully we will come up with a plan that we could use to move forward for the unknown future. Just a bit of background on the HBCU for those who may not know. The historically Black colleges and universities started as an outgrowth of slavery to help to educate the freed slaves and provide them with some equity in terms of education because of segregation at the time. And they have become an economic engine in their communities due to the multiplier effect over the years, a way to social mobility, transforming lives. And many of our well-known leaders have had an opportunity to study at the HBCU, and we need to be able to continue that legacy. The topic, which says we can't breathe, alludes to that perfect storm of situations with the two crises, the George Floyd situation combined with the COVID-19 situation, which is now impacting our schools that have historically suffered. And so that proverbial knee on the neck is what we are feeling now and what we'd like to discuss from the hospitality education perspective. As it is well known, there is a sharp disconnect and there's inequality in our society. And that has translated and transferred into the halls of academia, which was mainly set up to satisfy the needs and be a safe haven for those underrepresented minorities. So that is the risk we face right now. Schools are suffering from all kinds of ills that have crept into our little microcosms on our institutions. And as the hospitality education piece is a part of the bigger pie, we are affected by whatever happens at our institutions. And there are many configurations, many locations within which our hospitality programs fall. However, we are vital to this, and however we sit, we have to be the authorities to help determine what's next for the future education of our students. And that education is critical as the hospitality industry has been so greatly affected by COVID. Or the majority of our population, who are the underserved minorities, are impacted by everything that we're facing. The digital divide, 34% of our student populations have network or technology issues, yet we are thinking of going into a fully technology space. We're all connected by small degrees of differences. And if the history persists and continues to haunt us, we will be challenged to stay open. So with that said, I am going to turn it over to the panelists to answer some of the pressing questions that arise from all of these challenges. And I'm going to give you one more statistic. About 90% of African-American students are enrolled in majority colleges and university from a reliable source. There are 15 Black colleges that have closed in recent times. And there are roughly 15 HBCU schools nationwide that offer the hospitality management degree. The declining enrollments and small endowments are rendering many of these college programs vulnerable. What does the future hold? And where do we go from here? So, my first question to the panel: how many HBCU schools are there? Dr. Boger, I think I'm going to have you start on this question. How many hospitality schools are left? And in addition, and most importantly, what has their contribution been to society over the years in our space?
Thank you. And I'll pick right up from the statistic that you shared. While 90% of Black or African-American students might be in majority colleges, 90% of students who are focused on hospitality and tourism are in the historically Black colleges. You have to go through, and it's about 15 of us at this point. And it's been that way for years. If you check the major schools, the percentages and the absolute numbers, they are very small. So if you add up all of the students who are in the HBCUs, compare that against the top, even I'd say 50 or 60 top other schools, then you'll find our students. So I guess the the answer is if you are looking for people of color, you want to fish where the fish are. And I believe the two industry people can echo and support that.
Go ahead, please.
I could leave it at that. Well, over the years, if you ask me to comment over the years, the HBCUs have provided the major number of students coming from people of color coming into the industry. And there are several unique things. You know, historically, we say that as people of color, we have to work twice as hard to get half as far. Well, that tradition continues, except that over the years, hopefully the doors have opened, the playing field has become somewhat more level, so that twice as much preparation should lead to twice as much opportunity. And I'm hoping as a result of the dialogue that's going on right now, that in fact will take place. And I'll just stop there because we don't have much time and I want everybody to be able to see.
Okay, and Dr. Turnipseed, as the current president of the HBCU consortium, could you give us a feel for what is the plan moving forward from the HBCU consortium of schools in order to address some of the major issues that we're having? Is there a plan?
Well, again, thank you for the question, Dean. Let me, first of all, bring everyone greetings from Cheyney University of Pennsylvania, the nation's oldest historically Black institution of higher education, the mother of all HBCUs, and the only one founded decades before the Civil War. Just one bit of information. I'm delighted to represent all of the HBCU schools around the country that have hospitality management programs. I can immediately say that there is a plan. I've spoken with some of you on the call. I've spoken with some of my other colleagues. The reality is that these are very challenging times. There are no easy answers. And to the point of our contribution to the industry, HBCUs do contribute incredibly to the diversity from an African-American perspective. I'm not sure about some of the numbers that Dr. Boger mentioned earlier, but looking at some data recently for the top hospitality programs in the country that graduate African Americans, HBCUs in fact factor heavily. And sometimes we feel that we don't have the impact that we do. I'm at a tiny university. Cheyney has less than 1,000 students, and I'm in a program. I've been there for 8 years. We've never had more than about 35 majors. Nevertheless, we started in 1975. We've graduated an average of 6 or 7 students every single year. And that may seem minuscule until you look at the numbers and realize that the median for the last 5 years for all of the programs in the top 50 is right about 6 students. So in fact, this tiny program is actually just about average in terms of generating African-American graduates. So I think part of the plan is to keep doing what it is that we're doing. Part of the reason, as Dr. Boger said, that we're able to push more African Americans into the hospitality managerial space is because we have that special touch. We're a family. HBCUs on campus, students feel that, and we're able to develop them in ways that a lot of the majority institutions are not necessarily able to do so. But the key is to lean on the industry partners who believe in us. I know we have Hyatt Hotels on the call. I know we have Four Seasons on the call, the Hiltons, the Airmarks, the Sodexos, and on and on and on. These are major partners that have poured into the HBCU hospitality community. I would be remiss if I didn't especially mention Hyatt. One of the organizations I know that we'll talk about and that have been mentioned is NSMH, the National Society of Minorities in Hospitality. That organization is the largest, certainly the largest minority leading organization, and one of the largest overall in the hospitality student space that is interested in professionally developing our students and providing access to managerial job opportunities. Hyatt Hotels Corporation, for the last several years, has poured tens of thousands of dollars into the collective consortium to help make sure our students have a seat at that table. So these are challenging times. Every hospitality organization isn't in the same place to contribute where they used to, but those that still have foundations, others that have been sitting on the sidelines, we need the people who believe in the work that we do to double down and to help us do what we do even better and even more. One of the things that I'm amazed by is even in this COVID-19 George Floyd environment, our enrollment at Cheney University is actually projected to be up this fall, right? We're projected to have significantly more students than we had last year. So, and in fact, a number of students are not going to come because we don't have the scholarship dollars to give them. What we need is to, again, keep doing what we're doing in our family community on campus, keep doing what we're doing in the classroom, but keep reaching out to all of those in industry and in the community broadly who care and ask them to give more so that we can continue to contribute at higher and greater levels.
Well said, Dr. Turdip Seed. But as we know, the impact of COVID has been tremendous across the nation, across the world. The students are affected, and they're coming back to us, to the educators. How prepared are we to address their needs and to make sure that there's a safe space for them? Right, we have seen that the PWIs and larger schools have amassed millions of dollars for supplies and in preparation for reopening in the fall. They are reconfiguring classrooms and refining policies and directives and protocols. Does the HBCU have the ability to entertain the students back to campus without posing threats to their health and welfare?
Yeah, is that a question for me or is that for someone else?
That would be for anyone on the panel.
So, industry opinion, not academic, I would say yes. And I think the reason why is because there's a different experience at an HBCU. I graduated from a PWI, but once I entered the professional space, it was so important to me that I connect and give back to HBCUs in a way that I hopefully would have if I had been an alum. And what I'll tell you from an industry perspective, the difference between an HBCU leader, dean, is that there's more of an emotional connection. And I think that emotional connection, I think the investment in making sure that your students are cared for, that you meet not only their educational needs, but also their emotional needs. There's a greater investment on the HBCU side, and that's not to negate the passion that is with the leaders of non-HBCU organizations. But what I can tell you is that I can call Ivan, I can call Dr. Boger, I can call you, Dr. Deanne, and we can talk about students that graduated 4 years ago and how to make sure that they're still on the right path. So when we're thinking about bringing students back to campus, yes, from a resources perspective, there's always going to be the question about resources, but from an emotional standpoint, from a care standpoint, 100% without a doubt, the support is there for the students.
I can
I
say
would
that.
also add to that too, that, you know, coming from Morgan State, which I absolutely love and adore, and what that did for me was it built relationships with NSMH, and what NSMH taught me was the importance of relationships and how you use relationships to get the results that you need. And so I have relationships with folks from 10, 15, 20 years ago that, you know, that are still today. And the important role of the advisor is not only kind of the middleman between the students, but also the middleman between the students and the industry partners, right? So, you know, staying current and understanding kind of what's happening with these new business models. I mean, look at what we're doing today. We're on a Zoom call, you know, we're live, you know, I'm self-quarantined in a hotel, local hotel, you know, so it doesn't mean that our connections stop because there's a quarantine. It doesn't mean that the relationships end because I can't touch and feel you. I think what this has done is it's created an opportunity to get creative with how we connect, how we address certain issues, and then caused us to be creative with some of those resolutions that we need for the future.
Thank you. And Brian, you are an alum of the Bethune-Cookman University,
Correct.
and you are working in another space now. Could you share maybe what it's like on both sides of the coin and how you see the future for your alma mater, as it is believed that our students are not as prepared as those who attend the PWIs, and that coming back from this COVID environment where they're being homeschooled, they will lack even more in quality. How will we compensate for that?
Absolutely, great question. And yes, Hail Wildcats, a proud Bethune-Cookman University alum. And you're right. I mean, I've experienced what it's like to be a student at an HBCU, and now at DePaul University, a Catholic private institution that's well resourced, but there are certainly not infinite resources around. And so, to your previous point, you know, how will HBCUs be prepared to welcome students back? Well, I guess that, you know, sometimes we have to kind of anticipate the unknown in the worst case scenario. And while we may hopefully be able to welcome students back in the fall, the question becomes what contingency plans are in place to prepare students if this is another online environment. Are the faculty prepared, you know, to teach online? I know at DePaul University, there's some number. I've been sort of certified and trained to teach online, but I know right now there's about a cohort at DePaul University of about 300 or maybe more faculty members that are all being taught to teach online. I know a lot of students, whether it be at PWIs or HBCUs, were very sort of disenfranchised with the quick shift, and perhaps a lot of faculty members weren't prepared for that teaching online experience. And so how can we deliver that same quality of education and also that same care and passion that both Ronisha and Camille spoke to? Again, as an alum, both Dr. Williams and Dr. Boger, you all were my faculty members, and I have you all cell phone numbers now, you're friends. I got my master's from a predominantly white institution, and I am not in touch with anyone at that institution. While I know that's not apples to apples, but it speaks to that care and that nurturing. So how can we make sure that we're prepared for the online environment? I know that's a worst case scenario because it impacts resources financially to many institutions. But if that is the reality, HBCUs need to be prepared for that reality.
Absolutely. So in terms of, go ahead, please.
just one bit of information. I wanted to get back to the original point of your question. I think the last several speakers put great color on it, but just from the HBCU perspective, I want to talk about the criticality of why we really almost have to have school open in the fall, because that was really one of the questions in the background. Why even bother with opening schools if the situation is really difficult? We have to remember that our students don't come from the same place on balance as all students everywhere. I'm in the greater Philadelphia area. In a typical year, the average African-American family in Philadelphia may earn $40,000 or $45,000. So when we graduate students on a regular basis, and they're earning $50,000 to $60,000, it's a really big deal. But more than that, Cheney, for an example, happens to be the HBCU that gives the most scholarship dollars on a per student basis. And in fact, ranks number 20 nationwide for public schools in terms of scholarship dollars. The reason that's important is because the students who come to our school are coming there because we've given them, in many cases, a full ride. That means their room is covered. That means their food and beverage is covered. And in many cases, they've been factored out of their households. They're coming from households that don't necessarily have the resources, especially at a time when people aren't employed, even at levels that they were pre-COVID. So they need to come to campus. They need to take full advantage of these resources. And in many cases, they need to get away from hotspots where COVID is much more rampant. I mean, we're in deep suburbia. We're in the wealthiest county in the state of Pennsylvania, and there's a bit of a bubble. And the way that we're making this work, let me be clear, Cheney is severely under-resourced, but we do happen to have the advantage of being a part of a state system. We're one of 14 schools. So we're leaning on some of the resources from the state system. As well, we're a part of a small group of HBCUs that are participating in a study that is providing us with a stockpile of PPE. So we're looking at masks, we're looking at face shields, we're looking at checkerboard seating. We're asking all those questions. We are working to keep people safe because we recognize they must come to campus. Even in the emergency period in the spring term semester, 20% of our students remained on campus. We gave them that option because we understood that some people were really just not in a position for any number of reasons to leave campus. So we've been very thoughtful. We had a trial run, but I know some of our schools are private. We just have to work with whatever human and material resources are in our environment to make this work for our students. And to Brian's point, we definitely are spending a lot of time making sure that faculty are able to deliver content virtually in better and better ways. So far, so good, but we need more resources all the time.
Let me just say quickly, at UMS, our leadership under President Anderson has been very aggressive in both dealing with the need to go completely online at midterm, and then also to prepare for the return of students in the fall. There are a task force that are currently meeting that are working out ways for providing the kind of separation one needs in the classrooms, providing masks. There will be a special dormitory for students who perhaps test positive while they're with us, so they'll be isolated. And what is really interesting, the semester has been changed such that it will start earlier and end at Thanksgiving. So students can actually go home at Thanksgiving and not return until after Christmas. So that would help to keep them from bringing back the situation. So there's been a full-time activity, a full court press all during the summer on the part of the UMES faculty. And we have an extra obligation in the sense that UMES is the largest of the HBCU HTM programs with 10 faculty and around 150 or 60 students. And we're also are the only school in the 13 system, University of Maryland system, that has hospitality. So it's absolutely critical that we get up and running. And again, all of our faculty, we're teaching some courses, at least hybrid, if not fully online. So that has not been a problem with that transition for us. And we're looking forward to keeping things going come September, actually come August. Thank you.
That is awesome. So it sounds as if we are preparing, we are on the cutting edge of technology in our HBCU hospitality schools. to prepare for our numbers. And if I might add, the hospitality industry, as everyone might not know, has suffered the most, I'm going to say, from this pandemic. We have been hit from all angles. It is, the education piece is really so important for us to develop those leadership skills, to have representation in those companies and organizations, to teach our students how to get out there and think critically and prevent some of the ills that have plagued our industry. And so there's always a need for more. There is a constant dialogue that must take place between education and industry in order to be able to attack this monster, this beast. And even though COVID has really eroded our way of thinking and the way we operate, we are ahead of the game. And so with that said, I think we will talk a little bit about the elephant in the room, the beast, which is called social and racial injustice. And how has that impacted you in your space, in your institutions, in your organizations? And how will that affect our students who are coming back to us regardless? And that's for anyone on the panel. Everyone, I think, needs to answer this one.
Well, this is Ivan. I'll start by saying that I do work at Cheney, but this is my 6th higher education institution, right? I've worked at, this is my first HBCU. So I've worked at predominantly white institutions before this. And let me be a little bit more clear. I grew up on a farm in Mississippi, about 10 miles down the road from the white people that used to own our family, right? I've lived in 10 different states. And as I said, I've worked at 6 different higher education institutions. One of the things that I'm very clear about is racial relations are really not that different from place to place in this country. Believe it or not, I loved growing up in Mississippi. It was a wonderful place. People were exceedingly friendly. Yes, there are issues and concerns, and I'm glad the flag is changing, right? But the reality is we have to deal with these issues everywhere. On a very regular basis, I spend a measurable percentage of my classroom talking with my students or talking through issues with my students about dealing with the real world, especially in internship classes. Every hospitality program worth their salt requires people to have hands-on experience. So students talk about what their experience is in the real world, and inevitably racism seeps into that. As it turns out, the piece of information that some people who may not know should realize is 20% of the people who work in hospitality are African American, right? So we're overrepresented in terms of our population in the United States. But even though 20% are employed in hospitality, when you get to leadership positions at the director level and above, only 1 in 65 positions goes to a Black person. So clearly there are some issues, clearly there's some concern, clearly there's some knees and some necks. So again, I'm just prepared to be open. Again, we're a family. As Brian mentioned earlier, almost all of my students have my cell phone number and they use it on a regular basis. I'm here for them to talk through issues that they're facing in the workplace, that they're facing in the community, even that they're facing on campus or even with some of my colleagues. But because I feel like I may be a little bit jaded because of what I've been through, I try to put that on the back burner and hear my students' issues and challenges. And at the end of the day, my best solution is to make sure that I'm connecting them, I'm developing them, I'm putting them in a position to be financially successful because that will help. Does it clear up everything? No. I make 6 figures, yet 2 months ago, right here in New Jersey, I was called the N-word, right? So, loudly and clearly and dramatically. So racism still exists and persists. All that we can do is make sure that we're availing ourselves of the financial and other wherewithal to lift up our communities and create more opportunity. Because I think those are the kinds of things that will help even the playing field and make everything a lot better than it would be otherwise.
I'll give you just another side of that. I really think that this is the time to position the HBCU as really the best kept secret in terms of developing a wider, diverse education for individuals who are not our traditional students. I say to my white students all the time, you have an amazing opportunity here for a cultural immersion that will allow you to be able to relate to what will be the majority when you graduate. Or even now, if you add up all of the historical minorities, we've got to be at least 51 or 2% of the total population. So I say to them, going forward, these are the people you're going to be responsible for, and pursuing your education at HBCU automatically gives you contact with the names, the history, buildings that our colleges are named after. Our heroes, Bethune-Cookman was founded by Mary McLeod Bethune. In addition to that, you will get into the dialogue and the cultural intelligence that you can only get by spending time in that environment. There are interesting things that I'll give an example here. Not too long ago, well, a little while ago now, when I was looking to pursue my doctorate at Nova University, my white dean said to me, says, well, you know, why do you want to go through that unusual where you go on the weekends and stuff like that? Why don't you just, drop out and take a year and a half to do your doctorate like everybody else does? And he was really struggling to help me understand that. And he said, it's like being Black. Why would you if you didn't have to? Well, that gave him an opportunity to have a conversation with him, help him understand that Black people don't want to be white people, and there's a dialogue that can only take place on an HBCU campus, and it does, and our white students leave with a much better understanding of a lot of the cultural idiosyncrasies that you can get in no other way. And I will say quickly, I'm a graduate of the University of South Florida, the first African-American Black graduate. I didn't learn anything there I couldn't have learned anywhere else, but the thing I did learn was working and competing and understanding a white culture. I grew up in a Black culture. My first 4 years of elementary school were under American apartheid. So, I got lots of stories, but going to South Florida gave me an understanding of the white world, so to speak. I was never called Ernie, for example, until I went to USF. Black people usually don't cut off names like that, and so on and so forth. So there are a million things that can be learned by studying at an HBCU, particularly for our hospitality students. And so I'm projecting and hoping for a golden age of HBCU matriculation. Thank you.
So to the industry folks, yes, Ronisha, I would like you to speak of how, what it's like in your space as you recruit on both sides of the coin.
Sure. So interestingly enough, prior to June 1st, I supported America's full service hotels of Hyatt. And so campus recruiting was part of my focus for 7 years. And then on June 1st, I moved over to inclusion and diversity. And this is important to note because June 1st was the first business day after the world witnessed the murder of George Floyd. And so I came to work and expected not to talk about it, right? Because there are conversations that as a professional of color, we don't necessarily talk about at work. We talk about them at home, but we don't talk about them at work. And I give our CHRO and our VP of Inclusion and Diversity, our CEO, a lot of credit in saying, yeah, no, we're going to talk about it in this workplace. And so it was a moment when I felt really proud of Hyatt, and I felt proud of Hyatt many times, right? So I found Hyatt at NSMH. Hyatt is the only company I've ever worked for since college. And Ivan mentioned the fact that Hyatt has been in the game. We've sponsored every year a a couple hundred students to attend the NSMH conference to not just interview with Hyatt, but interview with our partners, Four Seasons, Hilton, because we can't do everything, right? We don't have endless resources, but what we can do is we can help with economic injustice through ensuring that students have paid internships and through ensuring that students are able to launch careers with organizations that may not be with Hyatt, but are great partners and great companies. And so June 1st, we started having conversations in Hyatt to say, we've already done a certain amount. We already have a legacy. How can we do more? And so I've never been prouder to have our CEO do a global town hall and say in that global town hall, Black Lives Matter, and here's why. And if you don't agree, please feel free to exit this company. And when you go to Hyatt.com, you see the banner page, Black Lives Matter. And not only was it about speech or was it about a banner page, but it was also about a commitment of $1 million to focus on who we employ, who we buy from, and also our communities. So really putting actions, even more actions behind what we've already been doing in the HBCU space and in the space of supporting marginalized or traditionally marginalized communities.
I would kind of like to piggyback on that. You know, with George Floyd actually being laid to rest here in Houston, it hit Houston very differently. And I will definitely say what COVID did for, I think, us as a nation is it caused us to slow down. You know, racism, systematic, and all of that is involved with that has been going on for years. We know that. Now it feels different because now I'm actually able to slow down and figure out what this means and how this feels to me. And so I think, you know, one of the things that we've done as a Four Seasons is we've taken the time to slow down and just listen, right? You know, let's start having these dialogues. We may not know how to have these dialogues, but let's start these dialogues with our staff. How do you feel? What's going on? How have your families been affected? And I think from a grassroots perspective, that's what it's going to take to really kind of bring to light. It's not over programming, in my opinion, about, you know, how do we bring diversity inclusion in this and how do we, because then it's disingenuous. But when you're really having heart to hearts with folks and you're hearing the stories and you're getting an understanding and saying, okay, how can we do this? Not what do you need to do, but how can we do this together? What does this look like? Your dialogue changes and then the results change because the dialogue is different. It's not coming from a place of I've just checked the box and okay, I've met a statistic and here we go, but it's really getting to change the culture of a company. And truly we can only also do that with, we can't do that without the partnership of an HBCU, right? With the advisor and those relationships as well. So it needs to be done in tandem because literally it does take a village. And so we need the village. We need to empower students to use their voices. We're listening. We need you talking. Tell us, you know, what are those blind spots that we may be missing? And I think that's the beauty of, if I can say beauty of what this is doing, is it's causing us to have to listen differently and take time to fully listen.
Ryan, I think you're going to say something and then we'll go to questions from the audience.
Absolutely. And just to just add a little emphasis to Camille's point, that it's not okay when there's not dialogue. We in all our organizations, in every organization, there has to be dialogue. It's painful when there is not. So for our students, for our faculty, and for our staff, we have to discuss it. Everyone in the organization has to acknowledge what's happening and has to discuss it.
Absolutely.
Wonderful.
Dr. Jihan?
Perfect. Thank you. I will go to the questions. We have a lot of people watching live, and I really appreciate every single people because they ask a lot of questions. But I just want to tell you very quickly that because of this pandemic, I just started to, instead of, you know, the commute in the morning, I'm riding my bicycle and I'm listening to this Audible books. I'm reading or listening, so to speak, right now, Thinking Fast and Slow. I don't know if you know Daniel Kahneman. In his book, he's telling that our brains have system 1 and system 2. System 1 is the one that's quick, intuitive. You know, I'm sure that you've seen that experiment that you see lines and you say that they are all different from each other, right? Like the length. But when you really measure them, they are the same. So he says that that's the system 1, the intuitive portion of the brain. So our upbringing, uh, our surroundings, our culture, whatever that if you are raised in a white family and if you've only had white friends and white environment, that it will take you an extra step to be able to go into system 2, which is not just trusting on your intuition, but you really have to. That's why I agree with all the panelists here that it takes effort. You really have to. So I don't want to speak too long because we have a lot of comments and questions from our viewers. I would like to share them with you. Deanne, I will do quickly, and then I will ask the all panelists to be able to answer any questions. First, one comment, let me just read that to you. One viewer said that I think HBCUs, historically Black colleges and universities, for those of people who may not be familiar with this acronym, should be marketed as safe haven institutions where you can breathe. So this is just a comment. And the next question is something that we have touched very quickly. Maybe some of you have mentioned, but one person asked this question. I would like to ask you if you have experienced racism in your personal or professional lives. Who would like to take this question?
I'll be quick. I think probably all of us have. And one example actually goes back to my undergraduate days where I was driving on International Speedway. I was slammed into the back of my car by a young white male, and a white police officer arrived and immediately issued me a citation. And literally, my car hit a ditch, hit a tree. It was a blessing that I was alive. But I was issued a citation, and this kid must have been going about 90 miles an hour. I mean, that scenario, I didn't have legal representation. I was a poor kid from the south side of Chicago and Daytona Beach. I didn't have families and attorneys that I could call, but that cost me a substantial amount of money. So that's just a very quick one-off example. Coming out of school, I was outside of college loan debt, immediately set back $15,000 to pay for that accident.
Oh, wow. Anybody else would like to maybe give an example from professional lives?
I could give you 2 hours, but I can't tell you the number of times when I've traveled in airports and I've been asked if I could assist with bags, you know, even though I'm dressed in my coat and tie or whatever. Presumption is that if I'm dressed like that, I must be a porter. So the number of times that's happened to me over the years, I can't even count. You know, virtually, certainly every Black male, not quite sure about females, has experienced something that they can share with you. It's universal, I would say.
I would agree to that. I think that the question, I mean, and again, I think it's a safe assumption that someone who is Black has received some type of racism of some sort, some personal story. I think the further question is what do you do with that experience? You know, do you allow that to keep you down, or do you allow that to continue to push you to be and do even greater? And I think that's where the crossroads, and again, that's what an HBCU can help do is, yes, we are coming in with these experiences, but I'm not going to use this experience to keep me down. I'm not going to use this to deflate me or my ability. I know who I am, right? And I know what's in me and what I purpose and what purpose lies in me, and I can do anything. So I think that's the bigger question with that. Yes, we all have experienced some type of racism. We don't have enough time on this Zoom call right now to go through those stories professionally and you know, personally. But I think, again, it goes back to what am I going to do with that experience? And if you look at these panels, this is what we're doing with our experience.
Yeah, here's a quick one for education purposes. If you see somebody like me who's 6'4" and 256, don't say, you must have played ball someplace. Say, I bet you're a rocket scientist. You know, it's a simple thing, but the number of times Brian probably experienced the same thing. You must have played ball someplace, you know, and you know, so I'll leave it at that.
It is as sad as it, you know, we hear all these stories, very small stories from your and I'm sure that you have many, but I think it's important to voice them, right? And it's important for everybody to start talking about them, to feel like empathy, right? To feel like what it means to be a Black person in America or any place else, or even a Chinese descent in America. I have some non-Chinese Asian looking students who have been assaulted by people that they brought the virus to America. So those are the things. Let me just continue very quickly with the questions. So the second one is for our academic audience, panelist members here. There are two questions, so I combine them together. What resources, technology, etc., do you see being made available to students during the upcoming academic year? Have any of your universities positioned funding to support distance learning? And another one is, how can we ensure digital equity among our students if there is any non-equity? Anybody would like to take this question?
This is Ivan. I would like to respond. One of the things I just want to say is that I just want to point out when we talk about the fact, okay, we can't breathe. All right, so I'm at Channing University. It's so tiny and so under-resourced. And by the way, there's a serious resurgence underway under the leadership of our, we have a new president, a new administration. Our students are excited. However, things got so bad a few years ago before we balanced our budget for the first time in 10 years that the university bookstore said, we just can't make any money on this campus, so we're leaving. So we were left in a quandary. What are we gonna do? We don't even have a bookstore. Like, how can you operate a university without a bookstore? What we did is we went to an all iPad model. So now all of our books are available online. Back in the day, it was the case that the semester would start, a lot of our students were under-resourced and they wouldn't purchase a book. They would try to get away with sharing books, those kinds of things. They didn't have it on the first week or the second week. Now, if you're enrolled in a university, you receive an iPad, right? So from day one, you have access to all of your textbooks. So this happened a couple of years ago, and that's one of the things that gave us a jump start for the COVID situation. It was unfortunate that we didn't have a bookstore, but we ended up being in a situation where our students were already very comfortable with accessing academic information and literature from iPads. Now, we did have an issue when we had to send people home, right? Or some people went home and had spotty access. So there were some partnerships, some hotspots were purchased, that kind of thing. But the reality is that we had to ask the question. We sent out surveys. We tried to find out who had what access. Once they had an iPad, then our only project was to make sure that everybody had internet access. And we've been able to.
We just, I think, lost Ivan there. Anybody else want to quickly, or should I go to the next question?
Well, just quickly, I can assure you the University of Maryland Eastern Shore has made great strides over the summer to acquire funding to be sure that we are on the cutting edge technologically and we'll be able to support all of our students. We've gotten a few grants and we're certainly looking for more, but we will not be deficient in any way when it comes to supporting our students technologically come the fall term.
Okay, perfect. I will go to the next question very quickly. Actually, there is a very quick comment from one of our viewers. Let me just read that to you. If you keep telling students to work hard, dress professionally, speak eloquently, get your degree, do internships, attend NSMH, and they will do well. This reflects differently at the executive level. So we thank this viewer for sharing this. Also, let me just ask a question to Camille and Ronisha, if they feel comfortable to answer. So somebody, one of our viewers, said that both Hyatt and Four Seasons board of directors are all white, with the exception of James Wooten. Yet they say value diversity. How? Anybody? Again, I don't want to put you on the spot, but if you would like to feel taking this question, please let me know, Ronisha or Camille.
Sure. You know, James Wooten does serve on Hyatt's board. I think that what we've been very clear about is that there's definitely a need for us to do more. We started this work 5 years ago, with a plan to definitely increase our representation by the year 2025. When you look at the progress that we've made as a company in the last 5 years, you'll see that there's been a commitment to growth in growing Black senior leaders. I think that ultimately anyone can tell you, right, that we still have work to be done in this space. So it's unfortunate that there isn't greater representation other than Mr. Wooten on our board, but recognize that we know this. Our commitment is to make sure that there is greater representation moving forward. And when you look at our VPs, when you look at our GM level, when you look at our assistant vice president level, you will see Black leaders in place, but that's just a start. And so I think that if you take a look at the commitments that our CEO made, he was very clear that change starts here and change starts now. And that's in who we employ and also who we develop.
That's wonderful.
You know,
Thank you.
In addition to that, you know, I think we need to really look at how we are defining diversity and inclusion. I think that, you know, when we literally look at diversity, I'm also looking at women in leadership as well. You know, I heard a saying that said diversity is being asked to the party, inclusion is being asked to dance. Well, I belong at the Four Seasons, so I'm dancing on the floor without even being asked to dance, right? So I think that we really have to look at truly how we're defining diversity and inclusion and understand that it's not going to happen overnight, that we need to continue these genuine conversations of understanding what does this mean for us as an organization, because it's not, I'm not a statistic. I don't want to be a check on the box. It's really being an influencer, and being an influencer means that it is going to take time, and I'm ready for it. I'm ready for what that means for us as an organization and what it means for us as an industry. We've got work to do. So I've got some job security, right? So, you know, I've got some, you know, I've got a way of really looking at this differently in this day and age. So.
Wonderful. Deanne, get back to you now. We have a few minutes left, maybe for your last question for our panelists, please. Thank you.
Okay, and if I may say, now is the time, guys. Now is the time. We have to get on the bandwagon like everyone else is. How do we use these unprecedented times to turn the trend in our industry, to encourage our students that hospitality education is the way to go, and that there is room for them at the top? I know NABHOOD has brought together a coalition of folks who have done a white paper, and they're presenting that to all the CEOs in the ivory towers to ask, what are these companies doing in terms of creating a pathway for representation at all levels through to the top for minorities? So you'll be seeing and hearing more of that. And thanks to Andy Ingram for doing that. I think Jerry Fernandez is on the call. He was also in a part of that that initiative. To the recruiters, because we're in hospitality education for industry, and it should be a mutually beneficial scenario. What are the shifts that you have detected that will help us to guide the changes that we know we must do in our curriculum? What should the institutions be doing to align more with the needs of the industry? And of course, a lot of it is unknown, but take a stab at it, please.
Camille, I know this is something that you're passionate about. So I think what I have to be so grateful for is that within industry, especially those companies who support HBCUs and truly have a role in this space, we have great partnership and great collaboration. So Camille and I have already been discussing how can we be a greater partner, right? So I love the question about our executive boards. And I would also ask, how are some of your other hotel companies showing up in this work? So the same way that you hold those at the table accountable, I would hope that we hold all of our industry partners accountable as well, because it's going to take more than just the people who are normally supporting HBCUs to come to the table and ensure that the resources that are needed continue. So, but the question was about curriculum. So go for it, Camille.
So, I would definitely say the imperative piece is absolutely what you were talking about, Dr. Bryant, is making sure that the relationship between the industry partners and the HBCUs are there, whether that's from a board, executive board, or what have you. I think it's going to be important to understand, I would say back in the day, and a hospitality curriculum was very operationally based, right? Very kind of F&B, very hotel accounting, but I think now as an industry, we're evolving so much, we have to keep up with those changes. And so there's a lot more in regards to leadership development that's important to hospitality and companies like Four Seasons and Hyatt, and emotional intelligence and some of these things that you got to come with skills, but there's the soft skills that are also just as important. So, I think it's not a one shoe fits all, when it comes to curriculum. And I think that, making sure that the curriculum is reflective of the times and what organizations are really looking for. And the only way that you are going to be able to do that is be able to host conversations like this, that industry partners can really get involved, because the want and need is there. And the conversations are happening, right? The industry partners are saying, man, I wish that they taught this, or I wish that they did this. And the students are saying, man, I didn't know that I needed this. And so how do we really marry those conversations together and really start to change so that we can equip our students ready for the industry that they're about to embark on?
And I've heard from students, they are concerned that technology is going to take their space. Is there any truth in that? And how should we approach that technology piece? The robot is going to take the place of some of those mundane entry-level positions, right?
I mean, literally, you're going to have to, I've got some advisors that don't have Facebook or Instagram or Twitter. So when you talk about technology, you can look at something as simple as engaging on a social media platform, or really looking at, at the end of the day, people are going to want service still, and so how we get creative. If you look at just the engagement, every major, hotel company has some type of online communication to its guests. Why? Because I just need to keep in contact. I don't need a machine to do that, but I do need someone to be able to engage with a guest who's about to check in. So, I think those are some things, not to be fearful that my job is going to be taken, but how do I make myself more relevant in this time? And how can I bring those assets to an organization?
I think also if we're having a conversation about being relevant, taking a look at advisory boards and seeing how many members of industry serve on your advisory board. I've had the pleasure of serving at the pleasure of Dr. Turnipseed on the advisory board of Cheney University. And I know that there are others who are industry. Bethune-Cookman has a great set of industry representatives, UMES as well. So curriculum and supporting the curriculum is really about staying connected with industry. And I think that's going to be so important moving forward.
Brian, I know you wanted to add a piece about entrepreneurship and the importance of that to our folks.
Thank you so much, and I'll do my best to be as brief as possible. Essentially, what I'm advocating for, both in my research as well as in practice, is radical creativity, and we're seeing it in the industry already, right? We see Four Seasons Palm Beach feeding many members in the community. We've seen Four Seasons New York serving first responders. Dr. Sheehan, I was listening to your panel last week. Some of your members reserved an entire floor to house first responders. These types of initiatives are happening all around the country, all around the globe, but we're not necessarily putting theory and language behind it. And essentially what this is a part of hybrid organizing. And one aspect of hybrid organizing is social entrepreneurship. So it's going to be very important that our students understand these concepts so that they can hit the ground running and be able to contribute on day one. Hybrid organizing, social enterprises, because it's, there's a biblical saying, and many of us in our culture understand, religion and the Bible. And it says, you feed a man, you feed him, for a day, but if you teach him to fish, you feed him for a lifetime. And in my opinion, social enterprises is just that. You are addressing systemic needs, and with 40 million Americans not working right now, we have a ton of social need, but we can do it in a way to generate revenue so that the bottom line still can protect and serve the organization. So I'll be as brief and end it there, but I look forward to chatting with anyone about hybrid organizing and social enterprises to better serve our industry as well as our students.
One of the takeaways from this panel is that we are supposed to start creating a roadmap for the future. So that would be a key piece to it for future development and sustainability. There is another project that is underway, which is the creation of academics, right? Promoting the academic career to our students so that they will fill the gaps and move forward to take over from leaders like ourselves in this industry. So there's a PhD initiative to attract minority PhD students for hospitality management students, which is championed by University of Boston, Dr. Arun Abnesia, as we are seeing that there is a lack of young minorities in the pipeline. And we want to make sure that there's representation in the classrooms of folks who look like us, to role model and present to the students another career path where they can influence what's happening in the lives of others and in the industry on a whole.
Absolutely. Let's do a shameless plug for Iowa State University as well, because it's been one of the first hybrid hospitality PhD programs. And Dr. Bogle, you mentioned when you were pursuing your doctorate at Nova, you needed a weekend program. Many of us, not all, our Black experience is completely diverse and a labyrinth in itself, but many of us cannot afford to quit our jobs and pursue a PhD full time. Iowa State is one of those programs that allows you that opportunity. I'm very grateful now to be ABD, one dissertation away.
And you defended in the middle of a pandemic.
Amazing.
Awesome. Okay.
Can we just mention, just as industry partners, myself and Ranisha, I think, again, just to reemphasize the importance of industry partners partnering with HBCUs as well. Keep in mind that in a COVID environment, the business models are changing. And so we need to start getting and having these discussions, within the first month of school starting. Don't start looking for a job right away, right? We don't know what the future is going to hold. And I don't think anybody has a crystal ball right now, but I think that's where the importance of, one, getting the education, taking this time to sharpen your saw is going to be just as, if not more important during right now because of everything that's happening. And so how do we communicate what these new business models look like, and then partner with the HBCUs that have the hospitality program to help, channel and funnel some of that talent that is coming from a hospitality program to the industry partner. And I think that's going to be one of the hottest topics that we're going to have to really face sooner than later.
Absolutely.
Very
so
important. Yeah, very important.
And you took the words out of my mouth. So we're on the same page in terms of establishing mutually beneficial strategic partnerships and alliances between industry as well as academia in order to be able to move forward in sync. This is about the time when we wrap the session up, and I'm going to ask for a few last words from each of the panelists real quick before we take our departure.
Well, since
Dr.
I started,
Bogle, we'll start with
we'll
you,
kind of wrap up. I see the HBCU experience as an opportunity for the nation to move from I can't breathe to a breath of fresh air. I believe the resources at the HBCUs are exactly what's needed for the improvement of the cultural intelligence of all Americans. And I'll make a shameless plug two for a book here. This one, The Fear of a Father, Can We Save Our Sons? Produced by a graduate of Bethune-Cookman, showing the HBCU also has individuals who are authors and can produce items of relevance to our immediate situation. So check this out. It's a quick read, but it will pop out to you three-dimensionally in terms of the situation and the dialogue that's ongoing. Thank you.
Thank you.
Anisha?
I'd love to use my final thoughts with recognizing Dr. Boger. The fact that he's retiring, just when I think about the number of lives and the students that you've impacted, and the fact that you've been a tremendous partner to me, to so many members of industry. You've gifted us your knowledge, but not only your knowledge, also your trust. And so I am hoping it's not true that you're going to retire. But I want to just thank you publicly for all of your contributions.
Yeah, quickly retiring from the University of Maryland university system. But the mere fact that I'm on this broadcast means that I'm going to be continuing to make as much of an impact as I can on hospitality education, particularly HBCU. Thank you.
Wonderful.
Good for us.
Absolutely. Ms. Gardner?
I would, just from a different direction, I would just say, family, take care of yourself out here. I'm in Texas. You guys know that cases are increasing. Socially distance and wearing your masks and taking care of not just making sure that you're employed, but making sure that you're spending time with loved ones, whether that's listening to, I don't know, new music, Moonchild, or whatever that is. But taking time out for yourself is going to be the most important thing right now during this time, because nothing's worse than coming to an organization empty because you're drained from all that's going on. So taking care of yourself, please take care of yourself during this time.
And to you, especially being in Houston, Texas,
yes,
Ms.
yes,
Garner.
Absolutely.
Dr. Turnipseed?
Yes, I just want to piggyback on Dr. Boger's comments earlier, and like Ranisha, congratulate him for all that he has meant to the industry. And I look forward to continuing to work with him. But as president of the HBCU Hospitality Management Consortium and a faculty member at Cheney, definitely I am looking forward to the golden age of HBCUs and hospitality. We've been doing the work that we've been doing for quite some time. I look forward to doing it better. And I think to partnering more with all those people who care, particularly at this time. One of the things that we want to continue to focus on is diversity. One of the things that I teach my students is about avoiding a crash. In the same way that you would avoid a car accident, that acronym, a crash, stands for avoiding ableism, classism, racism, ageism, sexism, and heterosexism, just some of the major dimensions of diversity that make us who we are. So even if you add, R or something for religion or whatever, the reality is that we are different in so many different ways, so we need to constantly interrogate that difference and think about how we can make sure that in addition to being diverse as we are, that we are being inclusive. And at the end of the day, to piggyback on Camille, we need to just take care of ourselves. That means, especially in this time, protecting our health, but also when we get into industry and in any situation, always thinking about how we can successfully move to the next phase, right? So it's about de-escalation in many cases that have racial over and undertones, but the reality is that we have to hold everyone accountable and be willing and interested in making things better. So I look forward to continuing to engage in that work in my position and with all the people on this call and beyond.
I'll be very brief. I know we're looking to wrap up. Promote Black people. Promote and listen to Black women. It's not happening enough.
Thank you. Thank you so much to the panelists. On behalf of hospitality education, on behalf of the the many students that we serve in our minority space, the HBCUs, and those schools that, that also educate that portion of the population. The hospitality industry needs us more than ever. Education is the key, is the answer. It's the answered prayer to a dream, said Dr. Mary McLeod Bethune. And we are helping dreamers and creating dreamers to live their best lives. And if we continue to do what we're doing, we will continue to not survive, but thrive as institutions that have devoted ourselves to educating the young leaders of our society, despite the challenges that we face. Thank you to the audience for joining us. And please continue. I invite you, our viewers, to continue to send your questions and contribute beyond this time to the virtual platform, which will be open for a few more minutes. Dr. Jihan, thank you so much. This is going to be a great ongoing effort, guys. It's the start of the dialogue, and we will put some notes together and plan a second round of this, because this should become a think tank. And there's so many other voices and perspectives that need to be heard as
Absolutely.
we approach the future.
Dean Williams-Bryant, thank you. Thank you so much. I really agree with you that we should do a think tank about this topic, and that will, make sure that we will have a greater audience and we will learn from each other. I would like to thank you, Dr. Dean Williams-Bryant, for bringing this amazing panelists who have great ideas, contribute greatly while they are smiling, every single of them. So I can tell that we are from hospitality industry. Also, I just want to tell that I'm very, very agree with Camille, what she said earlier. I can't just pass without telling that hospitality students are depressed right now because there's no jobs everywhere they go. But this morning, I just like see one of my students who are working in Marriott now found a job in Walmart. So he applies his customer service skills into other jobs. So there's be creative. There's a lot of different things. But I would like to thank again to our panelists one more time, dear Dean Williams-Bryant and Dr. Borger. Happy retirement to you. You're going to be coming to Florida, so we would love to see you in our university. Maybe do the think tank together with you. And of course, last but not least, but our viewers who've been amazing. They have been watching us and making a lot of comments. I'm so sorry for some of the questions that we didn't have time, but hopefully we'll continue this dialogue and we'll make great, wonderful achievements. Everybody have a wonderful day, night, morning, depending on where you are watching or you are watching this recording later. Thank you.
Be safe and be well. And see you later, Dr. Boger.
Absolutely.
Ciao.